I'm Kris Van Cleave in for John Dickerson. Welcome to CBS News Prime Time. The war against rats here in New York City has a new leader. We'll show you who the mayor appointed as the rat czar. But first,
this is the democracy that is going to transform a broken nation.
The leadership drama continues at Tennessee's State House. 2 lawmakers were expelled. Days later, they're both back at work.
We're following the situation very closely.
Over in Indiana, toxic fumes send residents packing. We'll speak with the state's fire chief about what's going on there.
Everyone needs to keep in mind that smoke is harmful.
And what will it take to make America a clean energy superpower? How to wean off big oil ahead. But we begin with a second black Democratic lawmaker who has now been reinstated after being expelled from the Tennessee State House.
Expel our voice.
The Shelby County Board of Commissioners unanimously voted to reappoint Justin Pearson to serve as his own interim replacement until the state's upcoming special election. He and Democrat Justin Jones were booted last week after they joined gun reform protesters on the House floor. Senate Democrats sent a letter to the Department of Justice Wednesday calling for an investigation into the expulsions and whether they violated the lawmakers' rights. Mark Strassman has more from Memphis.
No peace.
No Justin, no peace.
This is what democracy looks like.
Justin Jones and Justin Pearson.
Because this is the democracy that changes the status quo.
2/3 of the Tennessee Three marching supporters through Memphis to the intersection of reappointment and redemption.
We need to use the democratic process of reappointment in order to ensure that we send a clear message that we care about the preservation of democracy.
What you all see right now is a vote.
The Shelby County Commission's vote whether to appoint Pearson as his former district's interim state rep. Unanimously, they said yes.
To never bow power to the people.
2 weeks ago, this disruptive gun control protest on the House floor enraged Republicans. They expelled both Pearson and Jones, a tactic that boomeranged.
Ever been on a roller coaster quite like this one?
Definitely not.
Justin Jones.
Nashville's Metro Council gave Jones back his seat on Monday. An hour later, he took a victory lap on the House floor.
Are you being treated any differently by the Republicans who wanted you gone?
I mean, many of them, some will say hi, some still won't talk to us. I hope that the culture here changes. I hope that democracy thrives, and I hope that we take action to move this state forward.
Another development here is bound to upset those Republican lawmakers. Governor Bill Lee, another Republican, has signed an executive order that would expand background checks for gun buyers. He's also pushing legislation that would take guns away from dangerous people. And Chris, what we have here for Democrats is an example of hard-fought progress.
Now, Mark, we talked about Senate Democrats calling for a DOJ investigation. What might come out of that? What are they looking for there?
Yeah, two U.S. Democratic senators, Schumer and Warnock, essentially want the DOJ to investigate the Republican lawmakers for denying the 2 Democrats their First Amendment rights, freedom of speech. Now, some of this is probably part of the fallout, the political tug-of-war between the parties. Whether the case has any merit is unclear. Assuming that it does, what the DOJ would do about it is also unclear. So, but this story just has endless ripples to it, and that's just one of them.
It's keeping you busy in Tennessee for sure. Now, do Republicans have options to challenge Pearson and Jones?
They can't challenge their reappointment, and they can't punish them a second time for the same offense. That's essentially a violation of well, it's double jeopardy is what it amounts to. What they could do is try to make their lives uncomfortable. For now, neither Democrat has any committee assignments. Those were stripped away, for example. So they may be in for a fight once they get back. What they have going for them is overnight almost, they have a national platform that nobody else, Republican or Democrat in the chamber, also has. And they're probably going to keep flexing it until they get more of what it is that they do want.
And they face a special election, right?
It takes a special election. The governor has to set a date. He hasn't done it yet. But obviously, these the two Justins are going to run for their seats again because they want those seats to be more than just an interim appointment. They want to fill out their regular terms.
Mark Strassman, thank you. More than 2,000 people in Indiana still can't return home after an industrial fire sends toxic smoke into the air. The flames broke out at a site that stockpiled plastics. The EPA is now monitoring. Max Lewis from our Indianapolis affiliate WTTV reports.
A plume of black smoke rising into the air, stretching from across eastern Indiana and western Ohio.
So I went outside and there was a tremendous amount of smoke and a lot of flames happening at that point.
Officials say the massive fire broke out at a factory in the town of Richmond Tuesday, spewing so much toxic smoke into the air it appeared temporarily on weather radar.
This has been a challenging fire just because it's plastics.
The city quickly issued a warning to residents within a half mile to stay indoors. The EPA is now investigating whether asbestos-containing materials and other carcinogenic chemicals may have left the site in the smoke.
Fortunately, the toxic compounds that we're looking for, we're not seeing. But everyone needs to keep in mind that smoke is harmful, and we are seeing smoke in our particulate meters.
The mayor said the business has been a fire hazard for years and has been fighting in court since at least 2019 to get the owner to clean it up. Chief Brown said plastic was stacked from wall to wall and floor to ceiling.
It wasn't a matter of if, it was a matter of when this was going to happen.
The Department of Homeland Security tells CBS News the smoke is diluted as it escapes into the air, and the immediate concern is for the first responders in close proximity to the flames.
You ever seen anything like this?
Not like this. Nope, not this big, not live, only on TV.
The fire is under control but is expected to burn for days. CBS News did reach out to the owner of the plant regarding that cleanup complaint, but did not hear back. Chris?
Max Lewis, thank you. And later this hour, we'll speak with Indiana State Fire Marshal Steve Jones about this disaster and the next steps. The city of Louisville, Kentucky held a vigil Wednesday to honor the 5 people killed in Monday's mass shooting at a downtown bank. In a statement, the mayor asked those in attendance to also pray for the 8 other victims still recovering. The vigil comes the same day Louisville police released 911 tapes. We want to warn you, some of those calls may be disturbing. Our Roxana Sabiri reports from Louisville.
Chris, the community remembered the victims at a vigil here tonight, with residents speaking through tears and calling for gun violence to end. It's just hours since the police released those 911 calls. In them, you can feel the callers' fear as they pleaded for police to act fast.
Oh my God, I just watched it.
The 911 calls are chilling. The first one from a woman who watched remotely on a video call as the shooter opened fire on a board meeting at the bank.
This video is still going. Oh my God, I can't see anything now except for the ground.
Then a woman inside the bank calls cautiously as she hides in a closet with another person.
8 or 9 people have been shot. I'm in a closet hiding. Is that shots fired? Yes, it is. Stay quiet. Just stay quiet. I need your help. He's never hurt anyone.
By the time the shooter's mother calls,
he's a really good kid. Please don't punish him.
Saying her son has never done anything violent and that he might be heading to the bank with a gun.
We don't even own guns. I don't know where he would have gotten a gun.
It was too late. Tonight, 2 people remain in the hospital, including police officer Nicholas Wilt. Shot in the head as he responded to the shooting, he remains in critical condition. At a vigil in Louisville tonight, mourners honored the 5 people killed in Monday's shooting: Deanna Eckert, Joshua Barrick, Thomas Elliott, James Tutt, and Juliana Farmer. All employees at the bank where the gunman worked. Tiffany Cardwell knew 2 of the victims.
Are you afraid at all that this could happen again, either here or in a different community?
You know, I have 2 college kids, in different campuses, and this could happen, anywhere. But yes, you have to live your life still.
In a statement, the shooter's family condemned what they called his senseless acts of violence, adding while he had mental health challenges, there were never any warning signs he was capable of this shocking act. Funerals for at least 2 of the victims are set for Friday. Chris?
Roxana Sabiri, thank you. Still no word on what sparked a massive 3,800-acre wildfire in the Pine Barrens of Ocean County, New Jersey, Tuesday. Fire crews have the fire about half contained as of Wednesday afternoon. Officials say the flames were so intense at points they shot up 200 feet in the air, raining down embers. Firefighters tell us low humidity, high winds, and dry fuel on the forest floor made that firefight much harder. We're now tracking a severe storm and flood threats for the southeastern U.S. For more, here's meteorologist Chris Bruin from our partner at the Weather Channel.
An interesting setup here as we end out the week. We got a deepening area of low pressure pushing ashore in the northern Gulf Coast, and that's bringing with it heavy rainfall and the threat for some stronger thunderstorms. Tomorrow's going to be wet here from Alabama, Georgia, through the state of Florida, where we've already had some active flash flooding in South Florida. Very heavy tropical downpours. That's what's going to be streaming northward. We've only got one day, though, of this, so it should limit the overall rainfall. The problem is this area has seen a lot of rain altogether, and you can see that spiraling nature of it with some of these storms. The center of the low moving ashore, say around the Mississippi Gulf Coast. So some wind, gusty winds, high rip currents, but not the best of beach days here along the Gulf Coast beaches. And then storms push up into the Carolinas as we go into Friday morning, and then even north of there as we head into the weekend. Speaking of the end of the week into the weekend, we are watching the center of the country right in the heart of Tornado Alley for a typical severe weather setup. This could mean large hail, damaging winds, and strong tornadoes possible from Kansas down to Texas. For more in-depth coverage, watch the Weather Channel on cable and now live on your favorite TV streaming device.
Chris Bruin, thank you. Tim Scott has aspirations for the GOP as he explores a potential White House run.
I think the road to socialism is paved right through a divided Republican Party.
He sits down with our Caitlin Huey-Burns ahead. Hear what the South Carolina senator says about former President Trump. Plus, some developments on Twitter. A top U.S. news source quits the platform, and we hear from Elon Musk about how the business is going. You're streaming CBS News Prime Time. Federal prosecutors will not pursue charges in the death of an American citizen in Mexico. Video showed Shanquilla Robinson being beaten by one of the 6 people she was traveling with last fall. A death certificate listed the 25-year-old's cause of death as a spinal cord and neck injury. U.S. prosecutors and the FBI said Wednesday the available evidence does not support a federal prosecution. The family's lawyers said Wednesday they will continue pushing the U.S. government to prosecute.
So while we're here disappointed, we're not deterred. We're going to continue to press on. We're going to continue to demand that there's a high level of diplomatic intervention in this case.
Prosecutors in Mexico say their investigation is still ongoing. President Biden is visiting his ancestral home this week. After a brief stop in Northern Ireland to commemorate the 25th anniversary of the Good Friday peace agreements, he traveled to the Republic of Ireland. Mr. Biden spent Tuesday touring a castle in the part of Ireland his family hails from. He also visited the town of Dundalk to meet residents and make a pit stop at a local pub.
The Irish are the only people in the world, in my view, who actually are nostalgic about the future. Think about it. We're nostalgic about the future. I think we all are, no matter where we live, if we have Irish blood in us.
CBS News senior White House correspondent Weijia Zhang is traveling with the president, and she joins us now from Dublin. Weijia, good to be with you here. Have the residents in Ireland been excited to see President Biden? What's the reaction been?
Chris, it's great to see you too. Well, if you saw the images today in the video of the president meeting with thousands of people who waited on the streets for hours in the frigid cold, you might think that you were seeing a Hollywood star or the equivalent here in Ireland. He is no doubt getting the celebrity treatment, and he was basking in it because, as you mentioned, he has such deep Irish roots, and it's something he's talked about extensively already on this trip. He said that, being here. He couldn't understand why his ancestors ever left because it is so beautiful. There are signs everywhere to say welcome home, and that certainly is what it feels like, a homecoming for this U.S. president. So I think the reception has been very clear, speaking for itself, that people are certainly very excited just to get a glimpse of him and those lucky few who had a chance to hear him speak at that pub as he reinforced his love of his homeland.
Mr. Biden will meet with the president of Ireland Thursday. Do we know what the focus of that meeting will be?
Yeah, Kris, so I think this will be an extension of the meeting that he had at the White House with the Taoiseach of Ireland, Leo Varadkar, who will also be talking with the president tomorrow, along with the Irish president, Michael Higgins. And no surprise that they will talk about the Russian war in Ukraine, as Ireland is hosting some 80,000 refugees here from Ukraine. Of course, Ireland is also a member of NATO, so they will talk about the Defense Alliance and their commitment to do that. But I think the main objective of this trip is to reinforce the belief and the commitment in the 25th anniversary of the Good Friday Agreement. The president spoke at length about that today, about how that peace accord meant so much more than peace because it is necessary for economic prosperity. And so we expect they will talk about that as well. The president will address the Irish Parliament in addition to having those meetings before a formal gala here in Dublin. So he has a packed day, and then he will head to another part of Ireland to visit distant relatives and to trace his genealogy because he wants to make sure, Kris, that he is in fact Irish.
Sounds like a busy trip there. Weijia Zhang for us in Dublin. Weijia, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I will never back down in defense of the conservative values that make America exceptional. And that's why I'm announcing my exploratory committee for President of the United States.
So that's not an official campaign announcement just yet, but it is a big step towards a potential run for the White House from South Carolina Republican Senator Tim Scott. He sat down earlier with CBS News political correspondent Caitlin Huey-Burns to talk 2024.
If Donald Trump is the nominee for the Republican Party, would you support him?
I plan on being the nominee. Obviously, I have an exploratory committee moving forward.
But if Trump is the nominee, would you support him?
Obviously, I'm looking forward to being the nominee as I'm working on my own exploratory committee.
Scott faces an uphill battle in order to become that nominee. Should he formally enter the race, he would join a competitive field of candidates, including former President Donald Trump and another South Carolinian former governor and UN ambassador, Nikki Haley. As for the former president, Mr. Trump says he has no plans to leave the 2024 race, even if he's convicted on felony criminal charges. The 45th president told Fox News he would, quote, never drop his bid for the White House. Trump faces 34 counts of falsifying business records in the Manhattan District Attorney's criminal case against him. The Constitution does not prevent someone who is charged with or convicted of a crime from running and holding public office. Meantime, the man prosecuting Donald Trump received an envelope Wednesday containing a suspicious white powder. Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg's office says it got the envelope around 3 p.m. New York City police are testing that substance to determine if it is dangerous. There have not been any reports of illnesses or injuries. The judge overseeing the Dominion voting systems lawsuit against Fox News has sanctioned the media company. The judge says he is concerned Fox made misrepresentations to the court and possibly withheld evidence. Dominion's lawyers will now be allowed to depose witnesses again, and Fox will have to pay the attorney fees. Dominion is suing Fox News for defamation, accusing the organization of knowingly pushing false conspiracy theories that the voting machine company rigged the 2020 presidential election. The judge is also considering appointing a special master to investigate whether or not Fox lied to the court or knowingly withheld information. National Public Radio told its nearly 9 million Twitter followers Wednesday it will leave the social media site. Twitter recently labeled the organization as state-affiliated, then government-funded media, which NPR says undermined its credibility and editorial independence. The organization says federal funding accounts for less than 1% of its budget. Hours earlier, tech mogul Elon Musk sat down for a candid interview on his experience as Twitter's CEO. CBS News correspondent Jonathan Vigliotti has more on what Musk calls a painful tenure.
In a wide-ranging interview with CBS News partner the BBC, Elon Musk addressed a tidal wave of controversy and missteps.
The pain level of Twitter has been extremely high. This hasn't been some sort of party. It's been really quite a stressful situation.
Critics say after laying off nearly 80% of Twitter staff, the site has been plagued with operational problems, what Musk dismissed as glitches. He also pushed back on claims of rampant misinformation on the site.
I actually think there's less these days because we've eliminated so many of the bots which were pushing scams and spam. And previous management turned a blind eye.
One study found accounts that often link to false information have seen engagement increase 42% since Musk purchased the company last October. What's indisputable is the financial hit Twitter has taken. In March, Musk valued the company at $20 billion, down from the $44 billion he paid.
I think we're trending towards being cash flow positive very soon, like literally in a matter of months.
But there's also concern users will follow NPR's lead and leave the site altogether. Musk has previously said he would find a new CEO to run the struggling company, which he joked about in the interview.
I'm not the CEO of Twitter. My dog is the CEO of Twitter.
Okay. When pressed further, he said he planned to name a successor at some point. Jonathan Vigliotti, CBS News, Los Angeles.
Well, the search for New York City's first ever rat czar is officially over. Mayor Eric Adams announced Kathleen Corradi as the city's director of rodent mitigation Wednesday. She will earn $155,000 a year on the job. Corradi currently works at the city's education department. Mayor Adams says she has many strengths, but most importantly, in his words now, she hates rats.
You see, I have a long history with rats. My introduction to public service came when I was 10 years old, getting signatures on petitions for anti-rat measures in my neighborhood.
And like so many other things, the rivalry between New Jersey and New York continued, this time on Twitter. Last week, New Jersey posted this image on National Rat Day, saying, "We actually spoke with the rats representative. They do run the city." In response, New York City's sanitation force replied saying, quote, "NYC is sending rats packing. Wonder where they may end up." If you can't see it, look close. You can see New Jersey in the background. Well, we've known about plans for King Charles' coronation for a while now, but there was one big question mark on the guest list. What we know now about Prince Harry's plans after months of speculation. You're streaming CBS News Prime Time. Welcome back to CBS News Prime Time. I'm Kris Van Cleave. Here's a look at our top stories. A second black Democrat expelled from the Tennessee House will return to his post. The Shelby County Board of Commissioners voted Wednesday to reinstate Justin Pearson after he was removed for participating in a gun control protest on the House floor. Ukraine is investigating a disturbing video that's circulating online. It appears to show one of its soldiers being beheaded. Russia said the footage is horrible, but it needs to be verified. Moscow has denied all claims it's committed war crimes in Ukraine. A fire at a recycling plant forced thousands of residents in Indiana to evacuate their homes. Video from the scene shows a plume of black smoke rising from the facility which stored plastics. Officials have told residents the air is safe. We want to bring in Indiana's state fire marshal, Steve Jones, now. Steve, the local fire chief has said the recycling plant was filled floor to ceiling with plastics. Why wasn't this flagged as a fire risk sooner?
Well, I believe that they had addressed that. The locals are probably more apt to tell about the particulars, but there definitely was access problems for the fire department in order to access the site to be able to extinguish this fire.
How long do you expect this to continue burning?
They made pretty good impact on it today. So it'll probably be another few days burning, and hopefully it will dramatically increase over time. The firefighters have really worked hard today to be able to get access into the site and be able to get it extinguished. It's just it's a very manpower intensive on the fire department side in order to make an impact on this fire.
A few days sounds like a long time to be battling a fire. What makes this so challenging?
Well, there's only one way into that site, and the roads that were there were full of plastic storage. And so the fire engines, fire trucks, ladder trucks could not get access back into the property. And so today has been just a day of bulldozers pushing things out of the way, letting the firefighters put the fire out, and then bringing the bulldozers in again and just keep working at it to push into the site. So they've made great impact on it today, and that will continue through the night and into tomorrow.
I think the question a lot of people in Indiana are wondering right now, when and how will they know that it's safe to return home?
EPA is there. The health department's there from the county. They're doing air monitoring. And right now, we advise people downwind of the smokes, just stay out of it. And so as EPA and the health department does air monitoring, and we're able to continue to make an impact and get this fire extinguishing, things will begin to improve.
And Steve, real quick before we let you go, given that this was a situation that was flagged as a problem, but still ended up a giant fire, do local firefighters, local police, do they need more tools to address situations like this before they become a disaster?
Yeah, fire prevention is so important, whether it's in the home or whether it's businesses, and educating and getting those processes in place. This is a big impact on a community, and we want to make for sure, looking at properties and businesses, that we preach the fire prevention side of it. That way we don't have an event like this that takes place in a community that really impacts the residents.
Steve Jones, thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you.
Inflation cooled down to its lowest level in nearly 2 years last month. That's according to a new Labor Department report Wednesday. The Consumer Price Index increased at an annual rate of 5% in March. That's down from 6% in February. It also represents the smallest 12-month increase since May of 2021. But core inflation, which excludes volatile food and fuel prices, ticked up 5.6% in March, marking the first acceleration in the yearly number since last September. Some view this number as a better indicator of underlying price pressures. Bharat Ramamurthy joins us now. He is currently serving as the Deputy Director of the White House National Economic Council. This was kind of a mixed bag of numbers here, and we just threw a lot of things at the viewers here. But, you know, we've seen inflation slow down after peaking from about 9% last summer. But that's still a painful process for many consumers out there. Help us understand these mixed signals and how the White House is viewing these numbers.
Yeah, overall, this was a very positive report in our view. You saw, as you noted there, declining inflation. Actually, for the 9 months in a row, we've now seen headline inflation decline. And if you look at the big picture over the last 9 months, we've seen job growth go up, we've seen wages go up, and we've seen inflation come down. So overall, a good economic trajectory over the last 9 months. As you noted, there was a slightly higher reading on core inflation. A lot of core inflation is housing. And obviously, that's a major cost that families have to deal with. The good news on that front is that the most recent data that we have suggests that rental costs are actually coming down in most major metro areas. So we should see that number go down a bit in the future because of the contribution of housing in the months to come.
Now, food costs still remain uncomfortably high for many people. Over the past year, overall food prices were up 8.5%. What do you make of that? And when do people start seeing relief at the grocery store?
Well, actually, they saw some relief last month. One of the good elements of that report, as you noted, overall, over the last year, there's been an increase. But in the month of March, grocery prices actually came down, led in part by the decline in egg prices, which was obviously a main source of concern for consumers over the last couple of months. So good news on that front. We hope to see it continue because between groceries, groceries, gas, and housing, those are some of the main costs that families face. On all three of those, our view is that costs are trending in the right direction.
But we're still ways away from the Federal Reserve's 2% inflation target. That's what was normal before the onset of the pandemic back in 2020. Is 2% still realistic in this post-COVID world? And can we get there quickly without a recession?
Yeah, look, our view is that we are trending in the right direction. The president has been pretty clear starting last year that we weren't going to get there overnight. The goal was to see a decline in inflation over time, while at the same time protecting all of the job gains that we've made over the last 2 years. Remember, when the president came to office, the unemployment rate was well over 6%. Now it's at 3.5%. 12.5 million new jobs created under this president. That's 12.5 million people, 12.5 million families who are now getting a paycheck that weren't before. That's a lot of financial security. Our goal is to make sure that we protect those job gains while inflation comes down steadily. Over the last several months, we've seen exactly that trend. And our hope is that it will continue over the next months as well.
But we've also seen significant layoffs in many sectors, including the tech sector in the economy. How much more pain could Americans see before we hit that 2% mark? The Federal Reserve notes from their meeting indicated some growing concerns about a mild recession before the year is out.
Well, look, I don't want to denigrate the Fed in any way, but I would also say that over the last year or so, there have been a lot of projections about an imminent recession. I remember sitting here a year ago and people were saying a recession is around the corner. And instead, what we saw was a decline in the unemployment rate to the point where we hit a 54-year low just a few months ago. So what we see right now in the data is a very strong job market. We see that consumer spending continues to be very strong. We see significant business investment. In other words, companies are still feeling confident enough about the economy to put their money out there, start new production, new factories in the United States. We've seen a revival of American manufacturing, 800,000 new manufacturing jobs since this president has taken office. All of those bode well for the next months to come. And so we feel like we are well positioned to address any headwinds we may face in the economy, either domestically or internationally.
And real quick before we let you go, is it time for the Fed to pump the brakes on the interest rate hikes?
Well, one thing the president has been very clear about from the beginning of his term is that we don't comment on the Fed, that we believe in Fed independence. He's nominated people to the Fed that he thinks are data-driven, who care a lot about both price pressures and the state of the labor market, and he's going to trust them to make the right decision. What we're doing here at the White House is trying to make the Fed's job as easy as possible, helping them bring down costs. I just want to make one point before we go. One of the things that the president has fought for is a cap on insulin prices. Millions of families are paying hundreds of dollars a month on insulin. Starting this year, there's a cap at $35 a month for those folks on Medicare, and companies have voluntarily capped it for people younger than that as well. So we've seen a huge cost savings for all those families out there who rely on this life-saving drug.
Ramamurthy, thank you very much for your time, sir. Now, we have an update to a joint CBS News Kaiser Health investigation, and we've been following it now for some time. Last month, Anna Warner reported on a dental device some users claimed did significant damage to their mouths, even causing some to lose teeth. Now, federal prosecutors have launched a criminal investigation. The Interior Growth Guidance Appliance, or AGA, claimed to fix jawbones and cure conditions like sleep apnea. But lawsuits claim patients suffered irreversible damage. Attorneys for the device maker have declined to comment on the investigation. The FDA is also looking into the product. E-cigarette maker Juul has agreed to pay $464 million to settle a lawsuit accusing the company of marketing to children. 6 states and the District of Columbia first brought the lawsuit in 2019. As part of the agreement, the company is barred from directly or indirectly targeting young people in its marketing. News of the settlement comes days after the company agreed to pay nearly $8 million to settle a separate lawsuit in West Virginia. Juul has denied any wrongdoing. And Prince Harry will attend the coronation of his father, King Charles III. Buckingham Palace announced Wednesday the Duke of Sussex will attend the May 6th ceremony at Westminster Abbey alone. His wife, Meghan Markle, will stay in California with the couple's 2 children, Prince Archie and Princess Lilibet. Prince Harry has not seen his father or brother since the release of his bombshell memoir, Spare, which outlined long-standing tensions within the royal family. The United States has made a lot of progress on renewable energy in recent years, but is still a long way from being a clean energy superpower. Next, we'll try to find out why and what's getting in the way of getting that done. You're streaming CBS News Prime Time. The Biden administration is making its strongest push yet to get America's gas-fueled auto industry to go green. Ben Tracy reports on the new proposal to make 2/3 of cars sold in the U.S. electric within the next decade.
It's a massive jolt for electric vehicles. The EPA's proposed tailpipe pollution standards are so strict they would effectively force automakers to ditch most gas-powered cars and trucks and put the pedal to the metal on EVs.
Today's actions will accelerate our ongoing transition to a clean vehicles future.
Right now, fully electric vehicles make up just 7% of new car sales. The Biden administration is trying to supercharge that to more than half by 2030 and 2/3 by 2032. Major U.S. automakers are rapidly ramping up production of EVs, but there are concerns about the supply of raw materials for the batteries and whether the nation's power grid can handle charging demands.
And that's ultimately going to determine whether we can reach these levels.
John Bozzella represents the auto industry.
This is clearly ambitious. Is it realistic?
There's no question automakers know how to make electric vehicles. It's going to require a complete transformation of the automotive industrial base if we're going to be truly successful here.
Getting Americans to go electric is key to the Biden administration's climate goals. In the U.S., transportation is the largest contributor to planet-warming carbon emissions. But while 41% of Americans say they are very or somewhat likely to buy an EV, 47% say they are not, mostly because of the cost and lack of charging stations.
Charging stations like this one will eventually need to be on almost every street corner, just like gas stations are today. The Biden administration says it wants a nationwide network of 500,000 chargers by 2030. That's going to take a lot of work, so that's about 4 times as many that currently exist. Chris?
Ben Tracy, thank you. After decades of promises and some disappointments, renewable energy sources are finally taking hold in America. But even with incentives and investments, the United States still lags behind many developed nations in clean power. As of 2021, just 12% of energy consumed in the U.S. was generated from renewable sources like solar, wind, and water. Now, that number could grow, but only with political will. America's energy future is part of the main focus of this year's Columbia Global Energy Summit, which is underway here in New York City. I'm joined by one of the summit speakers, Vijay Vayadiswaran. He is the Global Energy and Climate Innovation Editor for The Economist. Thanks for being here.
It's great to be with you.
Polling shows that Americans are very supportive of renewable energy and increasing access for it, but yet we still lag behind most of the rest of the world. Why?
So there's good news and bad news. The good news is we might be at a turning point on clean energy in America. We had last year more renewable energy produced on the grid than coal for the first time in our history. Solar is the cheapest way to make power compared to fossil energy now, thanks in part to the energy shock that Europe has gone through and fossil fuel prices going through the roof. And the most ambitious climate and energy laws have just been passed. The Inflation Reduction Act, the bipartisan infrastructure laws, and that's going to give a lot of subsidies and other tax credits for new clean energy. That's the good news. We could even be on our way to becoming a clean energy superpower. You say, well, there's a but there, right? The but is we got to build the stuff, and our country has gone bananas. We build absolutely nothing anywhere near anybody. And so until we overcome the problem of permitting reform, of building transmission lines, allowing new power plants of any kind to be built, we're not going to get to that promised land of having a clean energy superpower. We're going to be stuck really with the kind of assets we have now.
So you touched on the Inflation Reduction Act, the Infrastructure Act, the CHIPS Act. All of these things were supposed to help spur demand for renewable energy. How is that helping, given that building anything in the U.S. can be tricky?
So it's the early days, but it's time to get going. Those laws, the Inflation Reduction Act, to take an example, gives something like $370 billion of taxpayer money. It could be even more than that. Probably spark $1 trillion of private sector money over the next decade. So we have 9 years left to work with. But the rules are being written by the IRS on who's eligible, what, and in other words, the bureaucracy. So we got to move faster. That's one challenge that Washington's got to work on. The rules we just saw from the EPA are part of this. There are other tax rules on hydrogen energy and carbon capture coming up pretty soon. So Washington is moving, but it's got to move faster. The second thing we have to do is build larger, and that's where Congress has to act. And that's really where your question is at. That's about permitting reform. It's kind of a boring term. Senator Manchin tried to propose it, but he got shot down at the end of last year. And I think that we have to have a bipartisan effort, both left, especially the environmental groups that are historically opposed to building a lot of stuff, as well as the right that's only interested if you build oil and gas pipelines, they're interested, not so interested in the other stuff. We need to find something of a bipartisan agreement, a grand compromise, that we might be able to get Congress to pass permitting reform. Without it, it's hard to do.
Compromise in Congress is hard and slow, and yet demand is growing. And, you know, California has already taken steps to ban new sales of non-electric vehicles by 2035. Can the U.S. keep up with this growing demand for renewable energy?
I'll tell you, I'll take one small bit of hope. I agree with you. Gridlock. I spent a bunch of time in Washington reporting a recent cover story for us. It says partisan as ever. Nothing's changed. But I understand self-interest, and that motivates politicians on both sides. The beauty of the climate and energy legislation now is that it's an all-of-the-above kind of law. It's not just a law that promotes windmills, let's say, or just oil pipelines. The Inflation Reduction Act has lots of free money, taxpayer money, your money and mine, that would subsidize everything from ways of using oil and gas cleaner, ways to use hydrogen or carbon capture technologies, as well as, of course, geothermal, the traditional renewables, wind. And most of the beneficiaries are in red states. The law was passed by a Democratic chamber, but most of the beneficiaries, for example, Texas is the leading renewable energy state in America, deep red. Louisiana, oil and gas country, gets a huge benefit from carbon capture. And if you look at where's the wind, it's in the Midwest and in the Southwest, a lot of red states. So what you find is that the industrialists, the companies who benefit from it, and a lot of the voters and communities that benefit are on the red side. And therefore, I think we're likely to see support from both left and right for some kind of compromise to get more stuff built, to get America going again.
Something to watch. Vijay, thank you very much for coming in.
My pleasure.
To the studio tonight. Now, it was probably just a matter of time, but engineers have combined an AI chatbot with advanced robotics. And the results, well, you'll hear what it has to say next. You're streaming CBS News Prime Time.
Hello, Amika. I've heard you can speak a lot of different languages. Is that true?
Yes, that is true. I can speak many languages, including German, English, French, Japanese, Chinese, and much more.
The Uncanny Valley is speaking back to us. That was the humanoid robot Annika, which uses OpenAI's ChatGPT-3 to engage in multilingual conversation. She, or rather it, has 17 motors to convey hyper-realistic facial expressions, including winking and pursing of its lips. Its developer, UK startup Engineered Arts, is now testing her with ChatGPT-4, which could offer even more natural-seeming expressions. After a wet winter, spring has super bloomed in Southern California. Wildflowers painted the Lancaster Hills orange after the area got more rain in the first few months of 2023 than all of 2022. Officials are cautioning visitors to check the rules before they plan a trip and to ensure the safety of guests as well as preserve the flowers themselves. The last super bloom occurred in 2019, which brought tens of thousands of spectators. It is a pretty sight. Up next, it's 48 hours for all of us here at CBS News Prime Time. Thank you for spending the hour with us.